The chamber lights dimmed as the final projection activated, and for the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council fell into complete silence. The image hovering above the central platform showed a single human soldier standing motionless. In vacuum, surrounded by wreckage that had once been an elite alien assault fleet. No weapon fire was visible. No support ships were detected. Only the soldier remained, untouched, as debris drifted like frozen rain around an unmoving figure encased in unfamiliar armor. The Council had demanded proof that humanity could defend itself without supervision. Humanity had responded by sending evidence no one was prepared to understand. Ambassador Elena Voss stood alone beneath the towering delegates of 100 civilizations. She did not raise her voice. She did not display anger. Her calm presence unsettled them more than any threat could have. The Council had gathered expecting negotiation, perhaps apology, possibly submission. Instead, they were witnessing revelation. For 2 centuries, Elena began, her tone steady and clear. The Council has debated whether humanity requires oversight, whether we are too volatile, too resilient, too unpredictable to exist without containment. You believe protection was necessary. You believe restraint was kindness. Today you will understand why we never accepted that protection. A ripple of irritation moved through the chamber. The Varelian Prime leaned forward, luminous tendrils flickering with restrained impatience. Human representative, this assembly requested clarification regarding your military escalation. Several border conflicts have ended with unexplained losses among our enforcement fleets. We seek transparency, not theatrics. Elena inclined her head slightly. Transparency is exactly what we are providing. At her signal, the projection shifted. The lone armored figure rotated slowly, revealing a sleek exhaustion unlike any technology cataloged by Council archives. Its surface absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Energy readings showed no emissions, yet gravitational disturbances rippled faintly around the suit's frame. It was not merely armor. It was presence made physical. This, Elena said, is the Mark III autonomous battle armor platform. It is not a weapon system in the traditional sense. It is an adaptive combat environment worn by a human operator. Murmurs erupted across translation channels. Several delegates began issuing immediate data requests. Others demanded inspection rights. The more perceptive among them remained silent, sensing that the demonstration had not yet begun. The projection advanced to recorded battle telemetry. An alien enforcement fleet appeared, weapons charged, formation precise, superiority unquestioned. The human figure did not move. Incoming fire struck, yet the armor absorbed energy without visible effect. Then something impossible occurred. The surrounding space itself shifted, trajectories bending subtly, energy dispersing before contact. The fleet's weapons failed not through destruction, but through irrelevance. Council strategist Halvoran spoke sharply. This is manipulation of physical constants. Such technology violates interstellar equilibrium accords. Elena met his gaze without emotion. Humanity signed no agreement limiting survival. The recording continued. Alien vessels maneuvered, attempted containment, launched boarding. Probes. Each attempt dissolved into failure. The armor responded not with visible attacks, but with controlled environmental dominance. Ships lost propulsion. Guidance systems inverted. Hulls fractured along stress lines that had not existed moments before. The human operator remained still, as if war itself had been denied permission to proceed. Silence returned, heavier than before. A delegate from the Therian Collective spoke cautiously. This technology, how many units exist? Elena did not hesitate. Enough. The words settled across the chamber like gravity, increasing without warning. What the Council did not yet understand was that the Mark III armor was not humanity's. First answer: it was humanity's final restraint. For generations, humans had endured monitoring, limitations, and subtle coercion disguised as diplomacy. They had studied alien doctrine, observed their strategies, learned their assumptions. They had discovered the Council's greatest weakness was certainty. The galaxy believed humans reacted emotionally, fought inefficiently, and survived through stubborn luck. That belief had allowed humanity time to prepare. On the outer rim of Sol's defensive perimeter, a single Mark III unit now drifted beside a disabled enforcement carrier. Inside the armor, Lieutenant Adrian Cade monitored distant signals from Earth Command. His breathing was steady. His posture remained relaxed. The armor responded to neural impulse and intent, translating human adaptability into controlled physical influence. It did not amplify aggression. It amplified decision. Status: Earth Command transmitted. Engagement concluded, Adrian replied. Opposition neutralized without fatalities. Hold position. Council response pending. Adrian acknowledged silently. He understood the real battle was not fought in vacuum, but in perception. Humanity did not need to destroy fleets to change the balance of power. They only needed to demonstrate that force against them had become meaningless. Back in the council chamber, tension escalated into alarm as delegates processed implications. If a single human in Mark III armor could neutralize a fleet without effort, then enforcement authority itself had been rendered symbolic. The hierarchy that had governed interstellar stability for centuries now faced a species it could not threaten, intimidate, or contain. The Varelian Prime spoke again, voice sharpened by unease. Humanity has introduced destabilizing capability without consensus. This assembly demands assurance such power will not be used offensively. Elena allowed a brief pause before answering. Humanity does not seek conquest. We seek sovereignty. The Mark III platform exists because history has shown that peace without strength invites control. You wish to protect us. We chose to ensure we would never need protection. She gestured upward once more. The projection shifted to a strategic overview of human defensive infrastructure. Orbital networks, planetary shields, autonomous response platforms, and mobile Mark III deployments formed a web of layered security surrounding human space. It was not expansionist. It was impenetrable. Understanding dawned slowly across alien faces. Humanity had not escalated to dominate the galaxy. Humanity had escalated to make domination impossible. One final transmission arrived from the Sol perimeter and appeared before the Council. The Mark III armored figure turned slightly toward the camera, silent and unmoving, as if aware of being observed across light years. No threat was issued. No declaration followed. The message was existence itself. Elena spoke the closing statement with unwavering calm. For generations you believed humanity needed guardians. Today you have witnessed the truth. Humanity does not need protection. Humanity has become the line that cannot be crossed. The Council did not respond immediately. For the first time since its founding, its authority had encountered a boundary. It could not negotiate. The realization spread quietly but irreversibly. The balance of power had not shifted through war. It had shifted through certainty. And certainty, once broken, never fully returns. The silence that followed humanity's revelation did not fade when the Council session ended. It expanded outward through encrypted channels, private briefings, and emergency assemblies across 100 star systems. No one openly declared fear. Yet every major power began quiet recalculations. Enforcement fleets halted routine patrols near human space. Strategic simulations were rewritten overnight. What had been dismissed as a regional species had just demonstrated control over the very conditions of battle. Ambassador Elena Voss remained in the chamber long after most delegates disconnected. A handful of observers lingered, studying the data projections again and again, as if repetition might expose weakness. None appeared. The Mark III platform showed no energy signature to target, no structural vulnerability to exploit, and no dependency on support networks. It functioned as a closed system directed by human intent. That detail disturbed them most. Technology could be countered. Willpower was harder to predict. Far from the Council, in orbit above a shattered enforcement carrier, Lieutenant Adrian Cade received updated instructions. Earth Command had anticipated the Council's demand for assurance and prepared a second demonstration, not of destruction, but of control. Around him, fragments of the disabled alien fleet drifted slowly, their systems inert but intact. The Mark III armor responded to his thoughts with seamless precision, mapping gravitational gradients, monitoring microfractures, and stabilizing debris fields that could have become lethal storms. Humanity was not showing how it destroyed. Humanity was showing how it prevented chaos after conflict. Adrian extended a gloved hand, and the surrounding wreckage shifted gently, guided into a stable orbital pattern. The maneuver required no visible propulsion. The armor altered local inertial relationships, redistributing momentum across space like a conductor guiding an orchestra. Sensors recorded the process for transmission. This was the message Earth intended the galaxy to understand. Power without discipline is terror. Power with restraint is authority. Within hours, the Council reconvened in emergency session. Delegates appeared with uncharacteristic haste, their composure tightened by urgency they could not conceal. Strategic monitors displayed live telemetry from the Sol perimeter. The Mark III unit remained alone, motionless, and completely unchallenged. Elena addressed them before accusations could form. She explained that the platform's primary function was environmental dominance within limited range, a defensive capability ensuring that hostile action could not unfold around a human operator. It did not seek targets. It denied aggression. Council strategist Halvern attempted to regain control of the narrative. He argued that any system capable of neutralizing fleets could be repurposed for conquest. Elena did not argue the possibility. She addressed the assumption. Humanity had developed Mark III not as an instrument of expansion, but as a final answer to coercion. For decades, human diplomats had endured pressure disguised as oversight, restrictions justified as stability, and interventions framed as protection. Each compromise had been studied, measured, and remembered. The armor was not born from ambition. It was born from accumulated restraint, reaching its limit. To demonstrate this, Earth transmitted archived footage predating the Mark III deployment. The Council watched recordings of human colonies complying with inspection regimes, accepting embargoes, and withdrawing from contested zones despite clear provocation. They saw reports of civilian losses caused by enforcement actions later deemed procedural errors. They saw humanity's consistent pattern: endure, adapt, prepare. The revelation reframed the armor not as escalation, but as conclusion. Humanity had not rushed toward dominance. Humanity had outgrown vulnerability. While the Council processed the implications, a coalition of Outer Rim powers attempted a private initiative. They dispatched a reconnaissance formation to test the perimeter, beyond authorized observation range. Their intent was limited, their confidence measured, yet their assumption remained unchanged. They believed the demonstration had been symbolic, perhaps exaggerated. They believed technology always possessed limits that pressure could expose. The formation approached quietly, its sensors probing for weakness. Adrian detected them long before they crossed engagement distance. He did not pursue. He did not issue warning fire. Instead, he allowed the Mark III environment field to expand. Slightly, a controlled boundary rather than an attack. As the alien vessels entered its influence, their propulsion systems lost coherence. Thrusters produced no thrust. Weapons interfaces reported functional readiness while failing to operate. Navigation arrays provided accurate coordinates that could not be acted upon. The ships were not damaged. They were simply denied the ability to impose force. Adrian transmitted a single message across open channels. Humanity recognizes your presence. Withdraw safely. No hostility registered. The statement carried no threat. It carried certainty. One by one, the vessels drifted backward beyond the invisible boundary and regained control. Their commanders reported the experience with careful language, but the meaning required no interpretation. Humanity had created a condition where aggression could not exist within reach of a single soldier. Back in the council chamber, the transmission played in full. No explosion, no pursuit, no retaliation, only denial of violence. The effect was profound. Power that could destroy, yet chose not to held greater authority than power that needed to prove itself. Elena watched as realization settled across alien faces. The Mark III armor was not a weapon that ended wars through victory. It was a presence that prevented war from beginning. Debate shifted tone. Some delegates demanded strict limitations. Others urged immediate treaties recognizing human sovereignty. A few advocated containment, but their arguments lacked conviction. Containment required leverage. Leverage required vulnerability. Humanity had presented neither. What remained was a question that none wished to voice openly. If humanity could deny force within its reach, what would happen if it chose to extend that reach beyond defense? A final data set appeared before the Council, detailing the operational doctrine governing Mark III deployment. Each unit required human oversight, human judgment, and human accountability. The armor amplified decision but did not replace it. Humanity's strength, the document emphasized, was not the platform itself but the discipline guiding its use. The galaxy had long assumed human emotion was a liability. Humanity now demonstrated that emotion, tempered by responsibility, became resolved. As the session neared its end, Elena delivered a closing clarification. Humanity would not pursue expansion through force. It would not impose its presence upon unwilling systems. However, any attempt to limit human autonomy would encounter a boundary that could not be breached. The era of protective oversight had concluded. The era of mutual recognition had begun. Across the stars, fleets adjusted course. Strategic maps were redrawn. For the first time, humanity was no longer categorized as a developing species within Council records. A new designation appeared quietly within secured archives: autonomous power, non-coercible. It was not a title granted lightly. It was an admission forced by evidence. Near the Sol perimeter, Adrian remained suspended in silent orbit, the Mark III armor still and watchful. He felt no triumph, only clarity. Humanity had not sought to frighten the galaxy. Humanity had sought to remove the possibility of fear being used against them. The difference mattered. It defined the boundary between dominance and peace. And across the vast distances of interstellar space, civilizations began to understand a chilling truth. Humanity had not escalated to fight the galaxy. Humanity had evolved beyond the need to fight it all. The Council's official response arrived 40 hours after the second demonstration, and the delay itself revealed more than the words it contained. The document acknowledged humanity's sovereignty, requested structured dialogue regarding Mark III deployment boundaries, and proposed a temporary suspension of enforcement operations within human-adjacent sectors. It was written in the language of diplomacy, yet every clause carried the weight of recalibrated fear. Authority had not vanished, but it had been forced to recognize a limit it could not cross. Elena Voss reviewed the response aboard the Diplomatic. Vessel Resolute Horizon, her expression composed as analysts highlighted implications. The Council had not demanded disarmament. It had not threatened sanctions. It had asked for understanding. That shift alone confirmed that humanity's demonstration had not been interpreted as provocation, but as irreversible fact. Still, Elena, new recognition was only the first phase. History taught that systems built on hierarchy resist change quietly before they resist it openly. The galaxy was adapting, but adaptation rarely occurred without pressure. Earth Command prepared for that pressure by expanding transparency without surrendering advantage. A controlled broadcast was transmitted to major civilizations, not as propaganda, but as documentation. The feed showed Mark III units operating in non-combat environments, stabilizing failing orbital habitats, redirecting asteroid fragments, restoring communications disrupted by solar storms. Each intervention was measured and limited, emphasizing capability paired with restraint. Humanity did not need to prove benevolence. It needed to make denial of its stability impossible. In the outer corridors of the Council network, however, not all reactions aligned with caution. Convinced that acceptance of human autonomy would unravel the balance that had preserved their influence for centuries. Their analysis concluded that Mark III could not be allowed to remain unchallenged. They reasoned that no technology could function without boundaries, and that discovering those boundaries, even at risk, was preferable to conceding strategic inferiority. The decision they reached was not reckless in their view. It was necessary. Their operation began with silence. A specialized task force assembled beyond standard observation lanes, equipped not for direct confrontation, but for layered probing. They deployed sensor distortions, signal reflections, and gravitational anomalies designed to map the invisible field surrounding a Mark III unit. Their objective was knowledge. Their assumption was that knowledge would restore leverage. What they did not understand was that the Mark III platform was not merely reactive. It was anticipatory. Adrian Cade detected the disturbances as subtle irregularities within otherwise stable space. The armor interpreted them not as attacks, but as intent patterns mapping probability rather than action. Earth Command authorized a limited response that would reveal consequence without escalating conflict. Adrian adjusted position slightly, allowing the probing vessels to approach within observational range. The environment around him remained calm, yet a boundary existed there, precise and patient. As the task force intensified its scans, their instruments began reporting contradictions. Distances measured correctly, yet produced incorrect travel times. Energy readings fluctuated without corresponding source. Control inputs executed while outcomes failed to manifest. It was not malfunction. It was denial of causality within a defined radius. The realization spread slowly across their formation. They were not encountering a shield or countermeasure. They were encountering a condition that refused to permit hostile intent to become effective action. Adrian transmitted a direct communication, his voice steady and without accusation. He informed them that continued probing would destabilize their navigation integrity and advised immediate withdrawal. The message contained no threat because threat was unnecessary. When the task force attempted to reposition, their propulsion vectors failed to produce displacement. It simply removed the connection between force and result. The ships remained intact, their crews unharmed, yet their capacity to impose will had been quietly severed. Across the Council's observation network, the incident unfolded in real time. Delegates watched not a battle but a demonstration of principle. Power without destruction. Control without violence. The coalition's vessels drifted at the edge of the human boundary, unable to proceed, unable to retreat, until Adrian permitted equilibrium to return. When he finally relaxed the environmental constraint, the ships withdrew immediately. Those who had argued for containment, found their position weakened by evidence that humanity did not seek confrontation, even when tested. Those who had advocated cooperation recognized that a stable relationship required more than acknowledgement. It required trust and human restraint. Elena addressed the assembly with deliberate clarity. Humanity would not pursue dominance through fear, yet humanity would not tolerate structures that depended on human vulnerability. The Mark III platform was not a challenge to galactic order. It was a correction to imbalance. Behind the scenes, Earth Command initiated a strategic disclosure that altered perception further. They revealed that Mark III was not designed solely for war prevention. Humanity had studied extinction events across the galaxy and concluded that reliance on external protection invited eventual collapse. Security must originate from within, guided by responsibility rather than imposed authority. Reassessing that judgment, reports accumulated describing human responses to crises beyond their borders. They intervened when invited, withdrew when stability returned, and documented every action transparently. The pattern formed a narrative difficult to oppose. Humanity had replaced uncertainty with a boundary. It condensed into a quieter realization spreading through strategic circles. If a single human operator could deny aggression within reach, and if humanity possessed multiple such operators, then any attempt to coerce human space had become not merely costly, but impossible. The implication reached beyond military calculus. It challenged the very structure of influence that had governed interstellar relations. Elena concluded the session with a statement that carried neither triumph nor apology. Humanity had sought to end a long era in which survival depended on permission. The Mark III platform ensured. Far beyond the Council's chambers, Adrian remained suspended beside the quiet remnants of former confrontation. He observed distant stars through the armor's interface, aware that history had shifted without a shot fired. The galaxy had expected humanity to prove strength through war. And as the Council dispersed into thoughtful silence, a chilling understanding settled across their collective awareness. Humanity had not introduced a weapon that could win battles. Humanity had introduced a presence that made defeat impossible. Recognition did not bring comfort to the galaxy. Systems that had once relied on enforcement patrols to maintain influence now faced a reality where coercion against humanity could not succeed. Trade routes shifted subtly away from confrontation zones. Military doctrines were rewritten to account for an opponent that could not be pressured by force. The Council maintained public calm, yet private communications revealed the truth. That absence of expansion unsettled observers more than aggression would have. Restraint paired with overwhelming capability could not. Engage only when necessary to preserve sovereignty or protect life. Avoid demonstrations intended solely to intimidate. Document every intervention. Humanity understood that legitimacy. It would be earned through consistent control of that strength. Ambassador Elena Voss traveled to neutral sectors where independent civilizations requested dialogue. Smaller powers spoke openly of historic pressures they had endured from stronger neighbors. They asked a question none had dared before. If humanity could deny aggression, would it extend that protection beyond its borders? Elena answered carefully. Humanity would not impose itself as a guardian. Protection would not be a tool of influence, of responsibility. While diplomacy unfolded, a deeper challenge emerged. A faction within the Council's strategic command concluded that humanity's restraint was temporary. Eventually impose order according to its own design. They believed prevention required preemption, even if success was uncertain. Their plan was not an attack on human territory. It was an attempt to sever humanity's ability to coordinate Mark III deployments by targeting long-range communication. Infrastructure believed to support operational synchronization. The plan relied on a flawed assumption. that Mark III units depended on external command. In truth, each platform functioned independently, guided by human judgment rather than centralized control. When the faction launched its operation, their strike units moved toward a remote relay network near the edge of human space. They expected. What they encountered instead was absence. No fleet appeared. No warning was transmitted. The relay stations remained silent, their signals unchanged. Then their systems began reporting inconsistencies. Course corrections produced no movement. Energy outputs registered normally, while propulsion failed to translate into thrust. Targeting. Arrays locked on coordinates that could not be engaged. A Mark III operator had arrived without being seen. Lieutenant Adrian Cade observed the formation through the armor's interface, assessing intent rather than hostility alone. The strike units had not yet fired. Their objective was disruption, not destruction. Earth Command authorized containment without damage. Adrian extended the environmental boundary with precise restraint. The strike formation found itself suspended in perfect stability. Their capacity to act removed without harm. Adrian transmitted a measured message across open channels. He identified their location, acknowledged their intent, and explained the conditions surrounding them. No accusation, no condemnation. He informed them they would be released once they confirmed withdrawal and committed to non-interference. The simplicity of the exchange carried weight greater than threat. They were not defeated. They were prevented. Back within Council networks, live telemetry forced confrontation with an unavoidable truth. Even covert operations could not bypass. The Mark III platform did not need to intercept force. It rendered force ineffective by design. Arguments for preemption collapsed beneath evidence that preemption itself had become impossible. The detained strike units transmitted compliance. Adrian reduced the environmental constraint gradually, allowing propulsion to return without instability. They withdrew in disciplined silence. No pursuit followed. No record of humiliation was broadcast publicly. Humanity preserved dignity even for those who had challenged it. That decision resonated across diplomatic channels more powerfully than any victory report could have. Alana addressed the Council shortly after the incident. Instead, she clarified humanity's position with deliberate calm. Sovereignty was not negotiable. Cooperation was available. Coercion would meet a boundary that could not be crossed. She emphasized that Mark III was not humanity's ambition. It was humanity's assurance that ambition from others would not determine human fate. The Council faced a transformation that could not be reversed. Humanity had not dismantled the old order through war. Humanity had revealed that stability grounded in imbalance was fragile by design. A new equilibrium was emerging, one defined not by dominance, but by the impossibility of subjugation. Beyond political chambers and strategic debates, a quieter realization spread among countless observers. The galaxy had long measured power by the ability to impose outcomes. Humanity introduced a different measure, the ability to deny harmful outcomes without imposing anything in return. Adrian remained watchful. The Mark III armor is still present against the vastness of space. Traffic. The patterns of movement adjusting to a new certainty. The galaxy confronted a realization that settled deeper with each passing cycle. Humanity had revealed a condition that made war against them meaningless. The transformation of interstellar order did not arrive with celebration. It arrived with caution. Civilizations that had once competed for influence now studied humanity with measured restraint, attempting to understand the discipline behind the Mark III platform. The question circulating through strategic networks was no longer how to defeat humanity, but how humanity defined threat. That definition, more than the armor itself, would determine the future of the galaxy. Earth Command anticipated that uncertainty could become as dangerous as aggression. when a mining world's unstable moon began fragmenting toward populated zones. A Mark III unit intervened. Observers witnessed the operators stabilize gravitational vectors. The demonstration carried a message more powerful than any warning. Humanity possessed the ability to reshape outcomes without destruction. Yet beneath this calm exterior, strategic analysts within Earth Command tracked movements that suggested a deeper resistance forming among older powers, unwilling to accept permanent limitation. A clandestine alliance began developing technology, intended not to overpower Mark III directly, but to disrupt human decision-making itself. Their theory was simple and dangerous. If the armor amplified human intent, then overwhelming a human operator with simultaneous crises might fracture the precision that made the platform invincible. They planned coordinated disturbances across multiple regions near human space, believing divided attention could create vulnerability where force had failed. The operation unfolded across 3 systems within a single rotation cycle. Communications interference struck civilian transport corridors. Artificial stellar flares threatened orbital habitats. Automated defense grids malfunctioned simultaneously. Together, they formed a web of pressure designed to test human response capacity rather than technological limitation. Earth Command recognized the pattern immediately. Humanity did not react with panic. It responded with structure. Mark III operators deployed in distributed formation, each unit functioning independently, each guided by a human mind trained not for reaction but for prioritization. Where chaos had been engineered, clarity emerged. Lieutenant Adrian Cade was assigned to the most critical disturbance, a failing orbital ring housing millions. Structural fractures propagated through its rotating segments, threatening catastrophic disintegration. Traditional engineering solutions required time the station did not possess. The armor did not repair the structure. It redefined the forces acting upon it. Stress lines stabilized. Rotational imbalance corrected. Collapse ceased. Interference signals dissipated when their physical transmission vectors were rendered ineffective. Stellar flare projections lost coherence. When energy distribution patterns were neutralized before impact. The coordinated disruption dissolved not through counterattack but through the denial of harmful outcome. Across the observing networks, a new realization formed among alien strategists. Humanity could not be overwhelmed by scale because its strength did not depend on centralized focus. Each decision point reshaped local reality. The Alliance's strategy collapsed not through failure of execution, but through misunderstanding of human adaptability. Evidence of orchestration soon surfaced. Transmission fragments revealed intentional synchronization of the disturbances. The Council demanded explanation from suspected participants. Responses were evasive, but the implication was undeniable. Resistance had shifted from open challenge to indirect pressure. Humanity faced not a singular opponent, but a mindset unwilling to relinquish dominance. She did not accuse. She presented outcome. Millions of lives had been threatened not by natural disaster, but by deliberate destabilization. Humanity had intervened without retaliation. The choice before the galaxy was not between control and chaos. It was between cooperation and permanent irrelevance. Her words carried weight because they aligned with observation. Humanity had not responded to manipulation with punishment. It had responded with preservation. That distinction forced even skeptical delegates to reconsider their assumptions. A power capable of restraint under provocation was not a destabilizing force. It was a stabilizing one. In secure human channels, however, the tone was more solemn. Earth Command recognized that indirect pressure would continue as long as remnants of the old hierarchy believed adaptation could be delayed. Humanity would not escalate conflict, but it would not permit erosion of the boundary it had established. Near the Sol perimeter, Adrian remained stationed within silent orbit, the Mark III armor a motionless sentinel against the darkness. He reviewed reports of the coordinated disruptions and their resolution. No triumph registered in his thoughts, only confirmation. Humanity had anticipated resistance and prepared not to crush it, but to outlast it. That pattern was more unsettling than conquest. It suggested a species that did not seek control because it had already secured something more fundamental. Within the highest levels of the Council, a final understanding began to take shape. Humanity had not entered a race for supremacy. Humanity had ended the race entirely. It was a condition that removed the need to dominate. The galaxy confronted a truth that grew heavier with every failed attempt to challenge it. Humanity had not merely survived pressure, the limit beyond which pressure no longer functioned. The galaxy adjusted its behavior, but adjustment did not erase memory. Civilizations that had once exercised control over weaker systems now faced populations asking difficult questions. If humanity could guarantee autonomy through discipline and strength, why had protection elsewhere always required submission? The influence of the old order began to erode not through rebellion, but through comparison. Humanity had introduced a standard that could not be ignored. Within the Council's highest strategic tier, a final contingency was authorized in absolute secrecy. Its architects no longer sought to defeat Mark III through force or disruption. They sought to test humanity's defining principle, restraint. Their analysis proposed that if humanity were forced to choose between preserving distant alien populations and protecting its own sovereignty, hesitation might fracture the clarity that made the armor undefeatable. It was a calculated moral pressure rather than a military one. Their plan unfolded along a vulnerable frontier where independent colonies existed beyond formal council protection. Autonomous defense systems within those colonies were covertly sabotaged, creating conditions that would soon escalate into catastrophic failure. The conspirators anticipated that humanity, committed to preservation, would intervene across vast distance, stretching operational capacity and revealing limits. What they did not anticipate was that humanity had long prepared for exactly such manipulation. Earth Command detected anomalies within moments of activation. Patterns of failure revealed intent rather than accident. The response was immediate, yet measured. Mark III operators deployed across multiple sectors simultaneously, not as isolated defenders, but as a coordinated network of human decision points. Each operator assessed local conditions independently, guided by a shared doctrine. Protect life where possible. Preserve sovereignty always. Escalate nothing unnecessarily. Lieutenant Adrian Cade was assigned to the most critical colony cluster, where orbital habitats had begun losing structural integrity under cascading system collapse. Millions faced decompression within hours. Adrian entered operational range and allowed the Mark III environment field to integrate with the failing structures. Pressure gradients stabilized. Rotational stresses equalized. The armor did not repair every system. It prevented collapse long, enough for evacuation and restoration to proceed. Elsewhere, other operators executed parallel interventions with equal precision. A destabilized energy core threatening planetary devastation was rendered inert through controlled redistribution of force. A chain reaction within a mining array was halted by altering inertial propagation through surrounding space. Humanity denied catastrophe across observation networks. The conspirators watched their strategy dissolve. Humanity had not been divided by crisis. Humanity had multiplied its capacity through discipline. There was no hesitation, no confusion, no fracture in purpose. The Mark III platform did not require centralized direction because human judgment itself was the system's foundation. Where the conspirators expected moral conflict, they encountered clarity. Evidence of orchestration soon reached the Council. Data fragments revealed deliberate sabotage timed to provoke humanitarian intervention. The revelation produced a reaction unlike any prior dispute. Even civilizations historically opposed to human autonomy recognized the severity of the manipulation. What had been framed as concern for galactic stability had endangered millions of lives. The legitimacy of the old enforcement hierarchy weakened visibly in that moment. Ambassador Elena Voss addressed the emergency assembly with composed gravity. She did not accuse specific powers. She did not threaten retaliation. She presented a sequence of facts: engineered destabilization, human intervention, lives preserved without coercion. Then she delivered a statement that carried quiet finality. Humanity would continue to act where preservation aligned with autonomy. Humanity would not accept a galaxy where survival required permission. The Council's response was unprecedented. A formal resolution acknowledged humanity as an independent, stabilizing force beyond enforcement jurisdiction. It did not grant authority. It recognized reality. For the first time, the Council defined its relationship with a member species not through oversight, but through coexistence. Within human command networks, the decision was received without celebration. Recognition did not alter purpose. Humanity had not pursued acknowledgement. Humanity had pursued certainty. That certainty now extended beyond its borders, not through expansion, but through the understanding spreading across countless systems. Aggression against humanity would not succeed, and manipulation of human restraint would not fracture its resolve. Near the Sol perimeter, Adrian concluded his final stabilization sequence and withdrew from operational range. The Mark III armor remained silent, its presence neither threatening nor yielding. He observed distant stars and understood that the true victory had not occurred in any single intervention. It had emerged from consistency. Humanity had answered every challenge with the same response-measured strength, guided by responsibility. Across the galaxy, fleets altered patrol routes not out of fear, but out of acceptance. Political structures adapted to a boundary that could not be negotiated away. The era when humanity was evaluated, contained, or protected had ended without war, without conquest, and without collapse. A realization settled across interstellar consciousness, quiet and irreversible. Humanity had not forced the galaxy to change through dominance. Humanity had revealed a truth the galaxy could no longer deny. Power defined by control could always be challenged. Power defined by responsibility could not be undone. And in the vast silence between stars, one certainty remained beyond dispute. Humanity had not entered the balance of power. Humanity had become the condition that defined its limits. Recognition of humanity's position did not bring unity to the galaxy. It created a dividing line between those who adapted and those who could not accept a future where control was no longer guaranteed. Among the remaining hardline factions, a final doctrine emerged, one shaped by desperation rather than strategy. If humanity could not be coerced, if its strength could not be exhausted, then the only remaining option was to create a crisis so absolute that humanity would be forced to reveal the full extent of its power. They believed that ultimate exposure would restore balance. They believed limits must exist somewhere. Their plan targeted not human space, but the fragile connective infrastructure linking multiple civilizations together. A deep space energy relay network responsible for stabilizing hyperspace corridors became the focal point. Its failure would not cause immediate destruction, but it would isolate entire sectors, collapse trade lifelines, and strand millions without support. The architects of the operation expected humanity to intervene. They expected Mark III operators to extend themselves beyond sustainable range. They expected that scale would finally overcome discipline. The sabotage was executed with precise coordination. Relay cores began destabilizing simultaneously across distant systems. Hyperspace lanes flickered, collapsed, and reformed unpredictably. Navigation became hazardous. Civilian vessels were trapped between transit points. Entire populations faced isolation that could last generations. The crisis did not resemble war. It resembled slow suffocation across interstellar space. Earth. Command recognized the magnitude instantly. This was not a localized disturbance that a single operator could contain. It was a network-level collapse designed to test humanity's willingness to act beyond self-interest. The response was not impulsive. It was deliberate. Humanity would intervene, but not through force or expansion. It would intervene through presence distributed across the affected regions. Mark. 3 operators deployed in coordinated formation across the failing relay network. Each unit established localized environmental control zones, stabilizing hyperspace fluctuations within defined boundaries. They did not repair the infrastructure directly. They prevented the instability from propagating. Where corridors had collapsed, control pathways emerged. Where vessels had been trapped, navigable space returned. The intervention did not restore the system's original design. It replaced collapse with survivable continuity. Lieutenant Adrian Cade arrived at the most critical relay hub, where cascading energy divergence threatened to tear open a permanent spatial rupture. The Mark III armor interfaced with the surrounding field without physical connection. Adrian assessed the momentum of destabilization, then redefined the conditions allowing that momentum to exist. Energy that had been amplifying into rupture dispersed into harmless equilibrium. The process required no visible exertion. It required decision sustained with unwavering focus. Across observation networks, the galaxy watched a pattern repeat at unprecedented scale. Humanity did not attack those responsible. Humanity did not demand submission. Humanity denied catastrophe everywhere it emerged. The conspirators observed their ultimate test dissolve into demonstration of the very principle they had sought to break. Human restraint was not fragile. It was foundational. Evidence of deliberate sabotage soon became undeniable. Transmission intercepts revealed planning cycles, synchronization signals, and contingency protocols anticipating human intervention. The Council could no longer interpret events as natural instability. What had begun as resistance now stood exposed as calculated endangerment of the entire interstellar network. The emergency assembly convened with urgency that surpassed prior crises. Delegates who had once debated humanity's autonomy now confronted a different question. If humanity had not intervened, countless civilizations would have faced irreversible isolation. Humanity had acted without demand for authority, without claim to jurisdiction, without expectation of reward. The meaning of power had shifted again, this time beyond argument. Ambassador Elena Voss addressed the assembly with measured calm. She presented the sequence of stabilization events, the scale of preserved life, and the absence of retaliation despite provocation. Her statement carried no triumph. It carried resolution. Humanity had acted because survival of intelligent life was a shared responsibility, not a strategic advantage. Sovereignty remained intact. Compassion had not weakened it. Within strategic circles, a chilling realization settled deeper than any prior understanding. Humanity's strength was not merely that it could not be defeated. Humanity's strength was that it would not abandon life, even when doing so offered no benefit. That principle made coercion impossible, because humanity could not be forced into an action through threat. Its response to danger was not calculated survival alone. It was preservation guided by choice. Near the stabilized relay hub, Adrian remained motionless within silent space, monitoring the gradual restoration of normal conditions. He understood that the greatest conflict humanity faced had never been external fleets or rival powers. It had been expectation. The galaxy had expected humanity to behave like every other dominant force in history. Humanity had chosen a different definition of strength and had proven that definition through consistent action. As hyperspace corridors reopened and stranded vessels resumed passage, a new understanding spread through every observing civilization. The final test of human restraint had not revealed limitation. It had revealed endurance without fracture. The old doctrine of dominance could not survive in the presence of a power that neither sought control nor permitted harm. And across the vast network of stars newly reconnected by quiet human intervention, the galaxy confronted a realization that could no longer be denied. Humanity had not simply drawn a line that could not be crossed. Humanity had become the reason that line existed at all. Stability returned to the hyperspace network slowly, like breath returning to a body that had nearly forgotten how to live. Corridors that had flickered with lethal uncertainty settled into calm continuity. Civilian vessels resumed transit under human-guided pathways that required no command structure beyond presence. Across dozens of systems, populations who had prepared for isolation instead witnessed restoration without demand or condition. Humanity had not claimed guardianship. Humanity had simply refused to allow collapse to define the future. Within the Galactic Council, the political consequences moved faster than any fleet. Emergency sessions gave way to structural reform debates that had been impossible only cycles earlier. Enforcement authority was no longer assumed to be legitimate by default. Several member civilizations proposed a new doctrine centered on voluntary coordination rather than imposed stability. The argument was simple and devastating. If humanity could preserve order without coercion, then coercion was not a requirement for order. Resistance still existed, but it had lost coherence. The factions that had orchestrated the relay sabotage found themselves isolated not by human retaliation, but by the collective judgment of the very systems they had endangered. Evidence of their actions circulated across diplomatic channels, not as accusation, but as record. The moral center of interstellar politics shifted quietly. Power without responsibility had revealed its final weakness. Earth Command maintained its operational posture unchanged. Mark III units remained distributed at key stability thresholds, not as occupying forces, but as anchors of predictability. Each operator functioned independently, guided by doctrine that balanced sovereignty with preservation. Humanity had no interest in replacing one hierarchy with another. The objective had never been control. It had been certainty that no external will could dictate human survival or threaten life without consequence. Lieutenant Adrian Cade continued his station near the restored relay hub, monitoring residual instabilities that faded with each passing cycle. The Mark III armor remained still, its presence altering nothing unless intervention became necessary. Adrian reviewed transmissions from distant sectors, reports of resumed commerce, reopened communication lines, and civilian messages expressing gratitude without expectation. He recognized the pattern humanity had created: influence without imposition, strength without demand. A final council assembly convened to address the transformation that could no longer be postponed. Delegates entered the chamber not to debate human autonomy, but to redefine interstellar cooperation under the reality humanity had revealed. Ambassador Elena Vos spoke with composed clarity. Humanity would continue to act where preservation aligned with autonomy. Humanity would not extend authority beyond invitation. Humanity would not withdraw from responsibility when life faced extinction-level threat. Her statement concluded with a declaration that resonated across every system connected to the Council network. Humanity had not sought a place within the balance of power. Humanity had established a boundary beyond which power could not be abused. That boundary would remain as long as humanity endured. It was not a promise of dominance. It was a commitment to permanence. In response, the Council ratified a new charter recognizing the principle of non-coercible sovereignty. No civilization could claim authority over another through threat of force. Stability would be maintained through cooperation or not at all. The resolution did not name humanity as architect. It did not need to. The transformation was visible in every clause. Beyond political chambers, fleets adjusted their formations not in fear, but in acknowledgement of a new constant. Trade routes passed freely through regions once contested. Patrol doctrines emphasized observation rather than enforcement. The galaxy had not been conquered. It had been compelled to mature. As the final relay node achieved full equilibrium, Adrian disengaged from continuous stabilization mode. The surrounding space remained calm without assistance. He drifted in silent orbit, observing distant stars that now connected countless civilizations without hidden tension. For the first time since the Mark III revelation, he felt the absence of imminent challenge. Humanity had not eliminated conflict from the universe. Humanity had removed the conditions that allowed domination to masquerade as order. Across interstellar space, observers reached a conclusion that no analysis could dispute. Humanity had been tested through pressure, manipulation, and crisis engineered on a galactic scale. Each test had produced the same outcome: preservation without submission, strength without escalation, victory without conquest. And in the quiet that followed the last failed attempt to bend human will, a realization settled deeper than fear ever had. Humanity had not merely defended its place among the stars. Humanity had defined the limits of what any power could ever demand again. The last phase of change did not arrive with alarms or emergency transmissions. It arrived as silence where pressure had once existed. For the first time in recorded interstellar history, no power prepared contingency plans for coercion against humanity. No fleet rehearsed strategies for containment. No council committee drafted measures to manage a species they could not influence. The galaxy had reached a state it had never known, one where dominance had lost its function. Yet within that silence, one final action unfolded. The remaining hardline architects of resistance, now isolated and stripped of legitimacy, initiated their final measure. They activated an autonomous weapon construct, hidden beyond mapped space. A relic designed in an era when extinction-level force was considered a viable instrument of order. The device was not targeted at Earth or any specific civilization. Its program directive was simpler and more devastating: destabilize star systems sequentially, until centralized authority was restored through fear. It was a weapon born of an old belief. That terror could rebuild control. Detection of the activation signal propagated through every major observatory simultaneously. The scale of potential destruction surpassed any previous threat. Entire regions faced annihilation if the construct reached operational momentum. Panic rippled through sectors that had only just begun to trust stability. The question that followed was not whether humanity would intervene. It was whether even humanity could contain a force designed for systemic collapse. Earth Command issued a single directive. Mark III operators would not engage the weapon through confrontation. They would deny the conditions that allowed it to function. Humanity would not fight extinction. Humanity would remove its possibility. Lieutenant Adrian Cade was deployed to intercept the construct at its first emergence point, a region where gravitational turbulence provided the energy foundation for its expansion cycle. As the massive structure activated, space itself began to fracture into cascading distortions, preparing to convert stellar mass into uncontrolled release. The sight alone was enough to freeze distant observers in dread. Adrian advanced alone. The Mark III armor expanded its environmental field, not outward in force, but inward in definition. The weapon attempted to initiate its conversion sequence. The sequence found no conditions that permitted continuation. Energy sought amplification and encountered equilibrium. Structural expansion attempted to propagate and encountered stillness. The construct did not explode. It did not collapse. It simply ceased to be capable of effect. Across multiple systems, additional Mark III operators synchronized their presence at predicted activation vectors. Each operator established the same boundary. No attack was made. No destructive countermeasure deployed. The autonomous weapon remained intact, yet its purpose had been erased by the absence of a universe willing to cooperate with its function. For the first time since its creation, the device existed without consequence. Within the council chamber, delegates watched real-time telemetry that defied every strategic model ever conceived. Humanity had not neutralized a weapon through superior force. Humanity had rendered the concept of unstoppable force irrelevant. The construct, designed to impose fear across star systems, had been reduced to inert architecture by a principle the galaxy could neither challenge nor replicate. Ambassador Elena Voss addressed the assembly as confirmation of stabilization spread across the network. Her voice carried no triumph, only clarity. Humanity would not dismantle the relic. It would remain as record, a monument to an era when power sought obedience through terror. Its continued existence would remind the galaxy that such methods no longer functioned. The Council ratified its final resolution without opposition. Humanity was acknowledged not as a dominant power, but as a permanent constant in the structure of interstellar reality. No authority would exist above its sovereignty. No force would be permitted to threaten life through coercion. The resolution did not elevate humanity. It defined the boundary humanity had revealed. In orbit near the silent construct, Adrian disengaged active stabilization. The Mark III field remained latent, ready but unnecessary. The vast machine drifted powerless against a backdrop of calm stars. It had been built to end civilizations. Instead, it marked the end of an age. Across the galaxy, fleets stood down from readiness protocols that had persisted for centuries. Trade flowed without hidden contingencies. Political influence no longer relied on implied force. Humanity had not conquered the stars. Humanity had made conquest obsolete. The final realization spread not through fear, but through understanding that could not be undone. Humanity's greatest victory had not been survival, nor dominance, nor even security. It had been transformation. The universe no longer functioned according to the rules that once governed power. And in the boundless silence between stars, the galaxy accepted a truth more absolute than any weapon ever forged. Humanity had not joined the balance of power. Humanity had become the line beyond which power itself could not pass.